Welcome back to the channel. We are going to be doing something a little bit different today. We're going to be doing a Commander deck tech for Naru Meha Master Wizard. Now this is going to be a Wizard Commander deck, so get your wands out, get your hats on, and let's get right into it. Now real quick, a few ways you can help support the channel is hitting the like button on this video. Lets me know that you guys want to see more stuff like this, but then also hitting the subscribe button. We are trying to hit 100 subscribers. We're a little bit off right now, but I will have a very special treat when we hit that 100 subscribers, so you definitely want to tune in for that. Your support is so appreciated. Now let's go ahead and look over what Naru can actually do. So she's going to cost us 2 blue and 2 colorless for a human wizard, and she's going to have flash, so we can cast her from the command zone at instant speed if we need to. Now one of the main reasons why she has flash is because her enter the battlefield ability. She allows us to copy an instant or sorcery spell we control, and then we choose new targets for that copy. So if we cast a counter spell and we need to have another one, but we don't have one on our hand, well, we can just cast Naru from the command zone and copy that so that we can get an extra counter. The other really cool thing about her is she's actually going to buff all of our other wizards. So she will not, unfortunately, buff from herself, but that extra +1/+1 will help us get a little bit more defense against trample decks, but then also to kind of act as a little bit more of a deterrent. Now, she is going to be a 3/3, and she's going to cost us only $1.26. So our first section of the deck here is ramp. Well, kind of. I mean, not really. I mean, this is really blue, though. We're going to start off with Stony Brook Banneret. Again, I apologize if I mispronounce any words ahead of time. This is going to be a 1/1 Island Walk Merfolk Wizard. Now, this Merfolk is going to allow us to reduce the cost of all of our Merfolk spells and Wizard spell by 1. So if we have a Wizard, that's going to be 1 less. If we have a Merfolk and a Wizard, that's actually going to be 2 less, which is going to be huge because some of our cards in this deck are actually Merfolks and Wizards. Now, we're also going to be running the Apprentice Wizard. It's going to be 3 mana. It's going to allow us to get 3 extra colorless mana. Ignore that the text that's been changed to actually just say add 3 mana to our mana pool. Now, we're also going to be running Caged Sun. As it enters battlefield, we are going to obviously choose blue. It's going to buff all of our wizards, but then also give us the opportunity to tap all of our lands for 1 extra. Now, we're also going to be running Sages of Iptir so that way we can kind of do a semi-scry type thing with our library. We're using As Foretold to be able to cheat out some stuff early, like Omniscience, which will obviously allow us to play out pretty much anything we want without having to pay the mana cost for it. And then, last but not least, we're going to be running Reset with High Tide. So, High Tide is going to allow all of our islands to tap for 1 extra, and then Reset is going to allow us to untap all of our lands. Now, the Oracle text has been changed on this card. We have to wait to cast it during an opponent's turn after their upkeep. So, basically, anytime that's not our turn, we can actually just use this 2 mana to be able to get all of our lands untapped and then tap them for that additional blue with the High Tide. Our next section is going to be Deterrent. Now, our first card here is going to be the Voldalian Illusionist. With this card, we're going to be able to phase out creatures that are threats to us. So let's say somebody swings in a big creature, well, we just phase it out. We're also going to be running Nameless 1, which is going to be buffed based off the amount of wizards we have, and we have the morph ability to be able to kind of pull that out of our hat really quickly. Dacra Mystic is going to also allow us to do a semi-scry for everybody. If we don't like what's on top, well then we can simply just have them all discard that card. Now, Cozy Strixer is going to be really cool because of the fact that in Commander, a lot of people tutor cards, especially early games. So if we could get Cozy Strixer out on our very first turn, this card is going to be huge before everybody else knows it. We're also going to be running Student of Elements and Paragon of Gathering Mist to be able to get a little bit of flying protection, because that is going to be one of our biggest weaknesses of this deck, is because we don't have a whole lot of flyers. So this is going to give us that option to be able to have that protection. And on our next topic, we're going to be talking about extra turns. Now, because of blue, I always have to take extra turns with this. Now, the very first card we're going to be doing is Lighthouse Chronologist. Now, this is our only creature that's going to give us extra turns. With our Lighthouse Chronologist, we are going to have to spend that mana to be able to put into it to level it up high enough that we get extra turns out of it. But that value is going to be added in the long run for sure, especially if it stays out even for 2 or 3 activations of that. Next, we're going to be running Temporal Mastery so that way we can miracle it early game if we need to. And then also we have Expropriate. we're always going to get one extra turn out of this, but then even we might be able to get an extra one out of that just because an opponent doesn't want to have to give up one of their permanents. The last two we're going to be doing is Time Warp and Nexus of Fate. Now, Nexus of Fate is going to be our instant extra turn if we need to take it for some reason, but then also Time Warp is going to be kind of a cheaper way for us to take an extra turn, which will be a sorcery speed. Our next strategy is going to be Draw Them Out. Now, we're not talking about baiting somebody into playing a card that they shouldn't. We're talking about physically drawing cards. Now, Sage of Fable is going to allow each of our other wizards to come in with an additional 1/1 counter, and then we can pay 2 mana to be able to take one of those 1/1 counters off and then draw a card. Now, this will be able to buff up our whole entire field if we need to, but then also if we need to draw cards, then we have that ability to do that. Juicy's Apprentice is also going to allow us to draw cards by paying 3 and tapping it. Once we have 9 or more cards, it's going to flip over, and then it's going to start doubling our hand size every single time we activate it. Now, with Riptide Director, we're going to be able to pay 4 mana, tap it, and then draw a card for each wizard we control. Even if we had 4 wizards out on the battlefield, paying 4 mana to draw 2 cards is value added. If we have even more than that, we're getting to pay 4 mana for even potentially drawing 10 cards. Academy Elite is going to enter the battlefield with X counters on it, where X is the number of sorceries and instants in all graveyards, and then we can also pay 3 mana to remove those and draw a card and then discard a card. Now, Azami, Lady of Scrolls, is actually an alternate commander you can use if you choose to. She's going to allow all of our wizards to be able to tap and then draw 1 card. Now, you also see Force Fruition here. Now, why would that be in there? You don't want to help your enemies, right? Well, sometimes it might be better to actually help people draw cards. If we're in a tight place in the game, we can actually go for more of a group hug type strategy until we start getting back in the game. Now, this will help us get that because we're trying to get people to draw cards into something that might be their combo piece. But then also another thing is, let's say somebody is only at 21 cards in their library. Then by us playing this card, that only gives them the option to play 3 spells, and then they all automatically lose the game. So it's really huge because of that. Our next strategy is going to be Pay Your Taxes. Now, we're going to start off with Fade Away. This is our blue board wipe in our deck. Now, it's a board wipe, but not really. If somebody is tapped out completely, they have no more mana available, then this card will completely board wipe all of them. If somebody has only 2 lands available and they have 3 creatures, well, then we're making them decide which one of those 3 creatures they want to keep out on the field. Now, with Dream Tides, it's going to make it where all creatures do not untap during their controller's untap stage. And then if it's a non-green creature, they can actually pay 2 mana. Now, what is really cool about this is because a lot of trample stuff is going to be kind of our weakness, and trample is typically in green. Now, this is going to make it where all green creatures do not have the ability to untap at their untap steps until this card is off the battlefield. Now, it wouldn't be a blue deck if we're not running Rhystic Study. Everybody knows what that card is. And then we're also going to be running Soul Barrier to be able to ping our opponents for that damage, unless they want to pay the extra 2. And then last but not least, we are going to be running Propaganda, so that way we have a little bit of a cushion from people attacking us. Our next strategy is going to be the real meat and potatoes. Now, we're going to start off with Teferi, Mage of Zephyr. I told you I was going to mispronounce something. And Leyline of Anticipation. Now, both of these are going to be able to give our creatures flash, but Leyline of Anticipation is also going to give us the ability to play any spell like it had flash, which will be important when we get to our combo piece. Now, Teferi also can be a commander if you choose to do that route as well. We're also going to be running Information Dealer, which is going to allow us to almost scry equal to the number of wizards we have on the field. Now, this is important because if we need a specific card, then we can just tap the Information Dealer to make sure that that card is on top, and then order it how we need to. We're also going to, if you see, run a draw type strategy. So we have Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, and Laboratory Maniac for that draw out ability so that we can actually win the game from that. We're also going to be running Diplomatic Immunities to be able to protect our Laboratory Maniac from any kinds of targetable spells. We're also going to be running Eye of the Storm, which is going to be a lot of confusion. Now, one of the really cool things about Eye of the Storm is because we do have 4 instants and sorceries that are extra turns. Even if we get 2 of them under Eye of the Storm, we're going to be taking extra turns like crazy. So, obviously your opponents can take advantage of that, but your opponents don't have counter spells, so we can keep them from casting those extra turn spells. We're also going to be running Mind's Desire, which is actually going to be our highlight for the deck. I can't tell you how many times I've played Mind's Desire and just completely stormed out and won the game. So, like I said, highlight of our deck. And then the very last card we have in this section is going to be Graceful Adept. Now, we don't want to be having to discard any of the cards we are drawing, so we want to make sure we have no maximum hand size before we start actually hitting all of the draw engine type stuff. Our next section is Nope. With this, we're going to be starting off with Willbender, Disallow, and Trick Bind. All three of these cards are going to give us the ability to counter an activated ability. Willbender and Disallow are also going to give us the ability to counter a spell. And then also Trick Bind has Split Second. So with this, we can counter an activated or triggered ability and completely shut down a combo and not have it done the rest of the turn. Now, our next card is Disruptive Pit Mage. With this, we can counter a spell unless that opponent pays 1 extra. And it has the Morph ability, so we can activate that out of nowhere. Patron Wizard is going to give all of our wizards that ability to counter unless their opponent pays 1. And Psychic Trance is going to make all of our wizards be able to flat out counter a spell. Now, like I said our combo earlier, Glenalendra is super OP in this deck as long as we have the Sage of Fables out. Now, with Glenalendra, she has Persist, so when she dies, she's supposed to come with a -1/-1 counter, which turns her into a 1/1. But with Sage of Fables out, she's actually going to enter with a +1/+1 counter as well. So she's just going to be able to keep on being recycled for 1 mana to be able to counter a non-creature spell. So make sure that you protect Glenalendra and Sage of Fables for that reason. Now, we also have Echo Mage to be able to copy any of our counter spells to be able to stack them on top of each other. And then obviously we're running counter spell. Now, we're going to run Wizard's Resort because obviously we're playing wizards. We have Inquisitor's Will, which is going to allow us to counter a spell unless they pay 2 for each wizard in play, which more than likely they're not going to be able to pay that tax. And lastly, we have Rewind, which is almost a free counter spell as long as we have 4 mana available. Our next strategy is Yoink. Now, with this, we want to be able to take other people's permanents in case if we're in a bind, then we have something to be able to grab that's good off the field. We're going to start off with Dalgos Deceiver. This is going to allow us to be able to basically get a free permanent as long as he attacks and doesn't die. Not many people run Shadow anymore. It's a very low played ability. We're also going to have Sorrow Temptation to be able to grab a creature as long as it's out on the battlefield. Ambiguity of Wills is going to let us permanently gain control of a creature that's power less than the number of creatures we control. At many times I've had at least 15 wizards out on the field, which pretty much will take any creature that we need it to. We're also going to be running Bribery so that way we can tutor for any cards that we need. And then in case if somebody starts going infinite with a infinite tokens or anything like that, we have Gather Specimens. Or if somebody's just running something like Gishat, then we can automatically take all of their dinosaurs from them. Our next strategy is Slow Them Down. Now with this, we're going to be running Supreme Inquisitor. Now this is kind of a later game wizard, but it's going to give us the ability to be able to grab out any combo pieces that somebody might have left in their deck. We're also going to be running Time Stop. Now with Time Stop, it physically ends the turn. So if there's any damage on the stack, any spells or anything like that, it just erases all of that, and all of those cards that are on the stack are exiled. The next card we're going to be running is Fate Spinner. Now, I can't tell you how many times Fate Spinner has saved me because it slows the game down that much. It also announces to the entire table what the player's plan is going to be for the turn based off of what they're skipping. We're also going to have Mishan, the Mind Cage, because we're going to have lots of cards in our hand, and this is going to make it very difficult to be able to deal damage to us. Frozen Aether is going to make it where all of our opponents' permanents basically enter tapped. And Polymorph's Jest is a way that we can be able to wipe out a lot of big creatures and or stop any combos that might be coming into play. Washout is going to return all of the permanents of a color of our choice. Aetherize is going to bounce all of attacking creatures. And Sleep is going to be able to tap down all creatures, and then they won't untap during their next opponent's untapped step. Now, a really cool card that we do have is Turnabout. Now, why would you want to run this? It's basically Sleep. Well, one of the cool things about it is it gives us the ability to tap or untap any artifacts, creatures, or lands. Now, we have to choose between those 3 categories, but if we weren't going to tap any of our opponent's creatures, we can just untap our own creatures to be able to tap them to counter more spells. Our last strategy is going to be I Tap That. Now, starting off, we're going to have Homeward Path. This is going to give us the ability to tap, and each player will gain control of all creatures they control. This is in there in case of one of our key combo pieces like Laboratory Maniac is stolen, then this will help us get back on track. You need to be very cautious when you activate this card because we do have the ability to steal people's creatures, and that will actually give them back if you activate Homeward Path. Now, we're also going to be running Vesuva in case if we steal any creatures with activated abilities, we have access to the colors of mana that we need to activate those abilities. Souldevi Extractions is also going to give us the ability to do a semi-type scry, but then also tap for 2. Riptide Laboratory is going to be able to allow us to bounce a wizard in case if we need to. For example, if we play Naru, then we have the ability to bounce her to our hand and reactivate the copy ability from there. We have Arcana Lighthouse so that way we can make our opponents lose Hexproof or Shroud to be able to target them. And then also Reliquary Tower so that we can get no maximum hand size. Our very last non-basic land is going to be Teferi's Isle, which is just a little fun gesture that I threw in here. It's a land that's going to tap for 2 blue, but it has facing, so we're only going to be able to use it every other turn. The very last cards that we're going to have is running 25 islands. Now, how did we end up? Well, we actually have a total cost of $344.53, which is actually not that bad for a commander deck if you ask me. Now, our overall ratings for the deck, the speed is kind of slower, so I went ahead and gave it a 2 out of 10. Our creatures do not have very powerful power and toughness, but they do have some kind of stronger type abilities, but because they have a low power and toughness, I went ahead and gave it a 3. Our spells, we do have some really big spells that leave a lot of impact on the field, so I went ahead and gave it an 8. And as for complexity, this deck is highly complex. I've had a friend play it and totally yucked up the whole thing, so that's why it has a 9. Average score, we got a 5.5. I'd say this is not too far off. I'd probably give this deck a 5, just depending on who's playing the deck. Now, for the actual deck stats, we have 32% lands, which I know is a little bit lower, but it does work for me. Creatures, we have 29%, enchantments 13%, artifacts 1%, planeswalkers 1%, instants 15%, and then sorceries 8%. All of those combined together, we're going to get an average mana curve of 3.76, which is a little bit higher, but not actually for commander. Now, what other possibilities do we have? Well, if you're looking for a different commander to use, you can always run Talrand Sky Summoner or Arcanus the Omnipotent. They're both really strong in the deck, especially wizards. If you're going for a mill-type strategy, Traumatize is actually not that bad, especially because we have the Force Fruition in the deck. If you're looking for a little bit more protection for Laboratory Maniac, I would recommend maybe running Robe of Mirrors. It is a very cheap enchantment, but we do have a lot of instants and sorceries to be able to protect them as well. If you're looking for Disgusting, you can go for Telepathy to be able to make everybody's hands revealed, but then also Spy Network will allow you to look at somebody's hand, but then also to give you a semi-scry type ability starting off in the game. Now, if you're looking for a little bit more taxing, Exhaustion and Shimmer are actually pretty good because they both will add a lot of exhaustion onto our opponents. And then if you're looking for just a little bit more ways to copy some creatures, Clone Legion is always really good, especially if somebody has a really big board available. Well, that's going to be all for today. What cards would you add in this deck? What commanders would you like to see me make next? Let me know down in the comments so that way we can continue to make content that you guys want to see. Thank you so much for stopping by, and as always, have a good rest of your day.